Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 9th episode of PubTalk Live, the live publishing talk show airing the second and fourth Saturday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern. I am your host, Sarah Nicolas. I'm a young adult author, the current managing director of Pitch Wars, and a library event planner. Just so you know, you can subscribe to reminders about PubTalk Live via email by clicking on the link in the description so you don't miss a show. You can also follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at PubTalk Live. And finally, if you'd like to support the show, you can find a link to the Patreon near the end of the video description down below. Now I am going to introduce today's guest host, Erica Cameron. Erica is the author of several series for young adults, including The Ryogan Chronicles, which was a Junior Library Guild selection, The Assassin's Duology, which was the winner of the Buy Book Awards in 2016. She's an advocate for asexuality and emotional abuse awareness. Her latest book, Pax Novus, just came out on Monday the 4th, and it's the first of a new science fiction series. So everyone, please welcome to the show, Erica Cameron.
Hi.
Hey.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on, and congrats on the new book release.
Thank you. Definitely exciting times. I've been working on this one for several years now, so it's kind of unreal that it is out at last.
Yeah, that's exciting. I am checking to see if we have any comments to start out with. It does not look like we have any yet. So we do have our viewer poll, and the question for this episode is, what do you most often listen to when you write? And I'm going to pull this up right here so you can see the question. I'm also going to put a link to the poll itself in the comments, and I'm having a little bit of trouble with my mouse pad today. So if I'm a little slow trying to get this copied, that's why. There we go. Yay for keyboard shortcuts. And I'm going to drop that in the comments of the YouTube show. So if you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, you have to click through YouTube to see the live chat that we have going on. And yeah, so you can find it there. Okay, so and we will discuss the results of that at the end of the show. That poll ends at 9:30, so make sure you get your vote in before 9:30. All right, so we're going to jump right into news, right, Erica?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So follow up to the Audible captions legal battle we've been talking about for the past month or so. The publishers have now made a proposal to Audible after a spokesperson said Audible's proposal, which we discussed on the last episode, did not moot the lawsuit as Audible had proclaimed 2.5 weeks ago. Now, neither side has revealed the contents of these proposals, so we have no idea what they're discussing. But hopefully we'll see another update in a week or so.
I'm definitely intrigued by this one. I want to see where it ends up.
Yeah. For those who haven't heard before, this is a battle about Audible deciding that they were going to provide captions for audiobooks, which is basically like producing an ebook from the audiobook. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many legal loopholes in that one that I have no idea where this one will end up, but I'm interested to see where the final decision falls.
Yeah, I think the only people who are going to win this is the lawyers.
Lots and lots of legal fees.
Yeah.
So obviously it's National Novel Writing Month, which everybody is pretty aware of by now if you live on Twitter at all. But there is also apparently National Novel Generation Month, and it's more geared for programmers. So NaNoGenMo is a challenge for coders to build programs that basically write novels, 50,000 words. And at first I was a little bit more intrigued than I ended up being, because apparently it is literally just any 50,000 words. Like, it can be apparently meow written 50,000 times, and that counts. And I wish that counted. Like, I don't think I can nano that.
Like, that doesn't count for us. No.
It would not count for me. So it's interesting. I think that it's the start of a technology-driven content creation, which could be both good and bad for human content creators.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was interested in it is people are saying that in about 20 years, AI are going to be writing books. And are they going to be good? Is my question. Are they going to?
It depends on how good the AI gets, because if what they're doing is studying historical bestsellers, pulling plot points, character types, and plot lines, and mashing them all together, then we're going to get a lot of recycled tropes, which is not necessarily bad, but isn't new. And so, but if it's true AI and they can read and learn from past books, then maybe. Yeah. But either way, not good for the humans that would actually have to be paid to content create, whether it is trope driven or new.
Yeah. So I wonder, do they think that AI is going to replace like human writers in the future?
I bet you someone does. Someone is like, well, if we can do that, then what do we need them for? We can streamline this whole process.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, someone is thinking that right now. I will bet you.
Well, it'll be a sad day.
It'll be, yeah. But hopefully that won't come for several years.
Yeah.
Decades.
So Jennifer says hello. Jennifer's been watching every episode since we started, so thank you. She also said, I popped in late and can't find the poll. So if you go to my Twitter, Jen, Sarah Nicolas, it'll be, there's a poll on there. It'll just be a couple tweets back. And I also dropped a link in the YouTube chat comments. So if you can scroll up and see those, then you can find it. All right. What do we have going on next? Oh, so I don't know. You probably saw this too, but a lot of people were talking about this article released by Publishers Weekly this week, asking if publishing has become too top heavy. They crunched the numbers and determined that sales of the 100 best-selling print books rose nearly 30% over a period of about 2 years, while the books that ranked between 101 and 10,000 saw their total print sales fall 16%, and books that ranked below 10,000 remained flat in that same period. And so this led to a lot of discussion. I saw a lot of Twitter conversations about it, about the existence and the health of what we usually call the mid-list.
Yeah, and until earlier this year, I worked with Barnes & Noble, and so it's like I've seen it on the bookseller end, where the front spaces are entirely bought up by those big names, and if you're not a debut or a already New York Times best-selling author, you're not getting one of those spots. And so, yeah, there's definitely a heavy-handed push of the people that don't require the heavy-handed push. I mean, Stephen King does not need to take up the 10 spaces in the front of the store. All you need to do is just let people know that Stephen King's got a new book. They'll come ask for it. But that's the way that the commercial bookstores at least operate. So yeah, I can definitely say I've seen that.
I've definitely seen chatter about it the last couple of years, but it's to see these numbers and to see, that those books have kind of increased in sales while the other books have decreased in sales. It's it's kind of scary for someone who's considered a mid-list or barely a mid-list author.
Like me. I don't even know if I can call myself mid-list.
I know, like lower mid-list.
Like is this I don't know. What's the other terminology? Because I'm probably that. But it's definitely true. And even years ago when I got into publishing, there was that knowledge and awareness that as an author, you're going to have to do a lot of your own marketing. But even then, it was still kind of seen as a partnership. And I feel like that partnership side has disappeared in a lot of ways. And for those like me who are really not any good at the marketing and business side of publishing, it gets to be a real struggle, and it's exhausting, and also expensive. Like, I can't afford it. Like,
Yeah.
I just sending out books for the promotion for PAX, like, put me on financial edge. It was not pretty. So, to be expected to take up the burden of promotion when we're not even usually paid enough for the book to make that our jobs in the first place is, unnecessary burden.
And I know it's tough on the other side. I know people who work in marketing and publicity and publishers are like overworked and underpaid,
Absolutely.
and they don't have enough resources. So it's just, I don't know how to fix it. Someone smarter than me is going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, I've always hoped that they would stabilize payments for books and be like, books, you get paid between $30,000 and $60,000 for a book, and then all of that excess money where they're no longer paying those ridiculous $750,000 deals, like, the enticement to sign with one publisher over another is the marketing package. Like, how much are we going to put into your marketing? And they could use all of that money for marketing, and all of a sudden a lot more authors would be able to actually survive on publishing. But
yeah.
I don't know how realistic that economic plan is, because economics was never exactly my forte.
Ebony joined us, and she says hi. Ebony's also been watching since the beginning, so thank you so much for joining us again. All right, Erica, you have some more sad news for us.
I know, I heard this, and this was heartbreaking. Bustle has laid off 10 staff members, including senior books editor Christina Ariella. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. And associate entertainment editor Mallory Cara. And this could potentially be horrible news, because what are they going to do with book coverage? Are they going to drop it? Are they going to lessen it? Is it going to be handed off to somebody else? And so there's a lot of questions now around what will happen with what was a very vibrant book community surrounded around the Bustle entertainment era. So I don't know. We're kind of waiting to see what they mean when they say they're hiring marquee people. I don't know even how to interpret that or what that means in this context.
Yeah, and there are just so few like media places where books are covered. To see one possibly get gutted is like really I hate that it's like a death knell, but like, it's not. I mean, book publishing is not going anywhere, but it makes it a little bit harder. Kendra said that broke my heart. Such a sucky time to be laid off too. Yeah,
right.
Definitely for those journalists.
And there's so few places, like you just said, that cover this. So it's like trying to get another job as a senior book editor. I mean, that's gonna be rough.
Yeah, well, hopefully they find somewhere else where they can promote great books.
Yes, I'm crossing my fingers for everybody who is stuck in that situation. Good luck.
Yeah.
I hope you find it. My agent is specifically asking for you to email him with book ideas if you have any of your own. So, Eric Smith, look him up, because that was something that made me laugh. He specifically put out a call. If you were one of the Bustle cuts and you've got a book idea, email him.
I saw that. Just so for anyone who's watching who wants more information about some of the things we're talking about, I am going to add links in the description after the episode has ended, so you can read more about each of the different issues. So the director of the library in Leander, Texas, just outside of Austin, is leaving after 12 years in her position due to a family pride storytime event. And I know this has been a contentious thing for libraries over the past couple of years, but this wasn't their first attempt. In May, they scheduled a drag queen story time, and it was canceled due to protests. And then in June, Open Cathedral Church rented a room to host a family pride festival, at which protesters outnumbered attendees, and they had to bring in police to control the crowds. And so in August, the city council voted to end library room rentals so that no one could rent a room again. and to host an event like this. And then in July, transgender author Lila Sturgis was asked not to present just 2 hours before her scheduled event. And then the library made a second attempt to host a Pride Story Story Time in October 12th, which is what prompted the director's separation from the library. The mayor called it insubordination because I guess the city council had told them not to do this, and the library decided to anyway.
Yeah. Where do we start with that?
I know, like, I've seen a lot of stories in the past, like 2 years, about libraries trying to host events like this and people showing up in open carry states with like guns on their hips and just like really kind of terrorizing people just for wanting to have a drag queen story time or something. I know my library hosted one on the 1-year anniversary of the Pulse. And because I lived in Orlando, so for anyone who doesn't know, but it was like a special event and there was a lot of like extra considerations taken, a lot of precautions taken. But I mean, and then a lot of libraries host some of these events without any issues, without any event, and so it's just, it's really sad to see someone who was in upper management of a library who was supportive of this event let go because they were supportive of these events.
Yeah, it's a sign of how much work there's still to do on acceptance or tolerance at the very least. Because yeah, so much of the country, and I just love how they don't see the dichotomy between you're not allowed to host a story time. Like, I want stories, I want to kill you. Like, they don't see the dichotomy between those two things. Like they see those as equal. Like, you want this, and so I get to do that. So like those sorts of mindsets, like there's really no reasoning with that.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason to what they're doing. Like, there is no logic or framework that can be argued because they're already so far past that point. And so trying to figure out where to go from here is rough for everybody involved, on the ally side, on the queer side. Because yeah, I mean, if your actual life is on the line for wanting to host a story time, then we have some serious problems.
Yeah. So X10 said, this breaks my heart. Canceling story time with diverse voices is only harming the children they're meant to educate and serve. That is so true. Jennifer said, what an amazingly horrible situation. Agreed. And then Ebony, I love this comment. People are so ignorant.
Truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a true statement. All right, so I have a kind of like complicated story. It's going to take a little bit to like give you all the background involved with it. So we all know about little free libraries, right? Most people know they're like the little wooden boxes that people put books in, and people can take
boxes for books.
It's like a community book exchange. So Todd Bowl, I don't actually know how to say his last name. It's Bol. It should be easy, right? Bowl.
We'll go with Bowl.
Okay. Founded the Little Free Library nonprofit in 2009 and unfortunately passed away last year. Now his family and the nonprofit he started are at odds with each other. His brother, Tony Bowl, said the organization filed 3 separate new trademarks used in connection with the words wooden boxes with a storage area for books and signs, non-luminous and non-mechanical of metal, and guest books and rubber stamps. This would mean that if any individual or neighborhood organization built and displayed any type of wooden book box, they could be subject to legal action, even if they called the container by another name. The Bull family filed a formal protest against the trademark application and is asking others to join them. The executive director of Little Free Libraries, Greg Metzger, said they don't condone for-profit businesses making money off the concept, which I understand, but works with like-minded nonprofits all over the world, even helping those who don't want to register their boxes with the organization. He says they're not going to go out and sue individuals for putting up a box, even though the trademarks would technically allow them to. Now, the twist here in all of this is that Tony Bull started one of those for-profit businesses. It's called Share with Others, and it sells both book boxes and pantry boxes, but they do have the intention of donating funds to nonprofits. He likened it to Newman's Own.
Yeah.
This is a mess.
Yeah, this is interesting. It really comes down to intentions, because both sides have logical arguments. And it was interesting too, because I read the comments on this one, and both sides actually like leave long comments on the article. And they reinforced the various positions. Tony basically wants to be allowed to make money off of this concept and sell boxes. And the other people don't want anybody to be able to do that. But they specifically give instructions on the website about how to make your own. So I'm not really sure where to fall on this one. Like, if somebody, I don't know.
It seems like they want to be able to be in the position to sue someone if they're doing this to gain profit. But there's no like legal definition there. So they're basically just registering the trademark. Kendra asked, it jumped a little bit. Kendra asked, how would they even find all the ones that weren't registered? Well, they're saying right now that they don't want to, that they don't care. That's not what they're really going after. I think they're really going after the companies.
Yeah, people like Tony that are making money off of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Because like they're not really making money off of it, so I'm not really sure if it would be. It's not really a case of someone else like edging in on their profits or their funds for the nonprofit. So yeah, I don't know. Because as long as no one's trying to stop people from making their own, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think they do also sell the boxes. So if it might be that, like, they would prefer that people buy them directly from the Little Free Library Company, which in that case, yeah, I can see that, because they're protecting their own source of funds for the nonprofit. But if they take that trademark, then they have power to start going after everybody. And will they use that?
Yeah. Sorry, my dog is
very active
wanting attention. Yeah. I think there's my neighbors next door are having a little party and you can hear them. So I think it's making him nervous.
Yeah, that's fine. My roommate's cat is that little lump. She decided to come hang out tonight, so but she's much quieter than Jasper. All right, so let's see. Sourcebooks. They've announced that they're running the Indie Rapid Replenishment Program, which basically means fast replenishment for indie bookstores. Good for the holidays. I'm hoping that means a lot of the good Sourcebooks books will be in stock for Christmas shopping as it comes in, Hanukkah shopping, all of the different holidays that are coming up in the next couple of months, because they are all packed into winter. So yeah, that's good. I know that when I worked for the bookstore, that was always nice when we were able to actually get things quickly when we ordered it. And I worked for a major bookstore, so I can imagine sometimes the wait and the hassle for getting it for independent stores is annoying.
Yeah. I mean, they did this last year, and I guess it worked for them, and so they're doing it again this year. And I know it requires a little more manpower for them, but I also I wonder what it would take for publishers like this to be able to do this year round. Because I feel like that would be a major advantage for them in the competition against Amazon, of course. Because Amazon, like, you order a book and it comes the next day. And so if bookstores were able to compete with that, would that make a difference in the kind of like book selling culture that we have?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I know with the Barnes & Noble membership, you get the free express shipping if you're a member or whatever, and it's not Amazon speed usually, but it is pretty quick. And I feel Like either they don't do the right marketing for it, or people just don't care and they're like, whatever, I had to order something else on Amazon anyway, might as well get the books there too, sort of mindset. Because even when I explained, like, that's express shipping, it's not overnight or anything, but you should get it in a couple of business days, then some people were still like, Amazon. Even when they had both the Prime membership and the Barnes and Noble one, so it wasn't a question of them spending extra money or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's hard to say, because Barnes and Noble kind of already has that in place, and I'm not sure how well it's doing for them or not, as far as actual numbers.
Yeah. Well, also in distribution news, so Baker and Taylor announced earlier this year that it would discontinue its retail operations. And I know that caused a lot of uproar because that basically leaves one major distributor. And a lot of publishers are trying to figure out how to get their books, especially into Western bookstore states in the Western states. Well, Penguin Random House has one solution. They have actually taken over Baker and Taylor's Reno warehouse in operation to distribute their own books. They've discussed having a Western fulfillment center for years, and this was obviously the perfect opportunity for them to take over the operations.
The picture of that place is insane.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time actually physically imagining 244,000 square feet. Like, I just can't conceptualize that size. I don't know that I've ever been in a building that big. Maybe like the Javits Convention Center. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to scale it in my head and I can't. It's massive.
Yeah, and it's only a quarter the size of their Eastern warehouse too. So
much things, so many books. Can I go shopping in there?
But again, that's just one publisher. So I don't know. I still am not quite sure how the other publishers are managing it.
Yeah, and they did say that they're kind of, I don't know what they're doing with all of the inventory that was kind of already in there. If I think they're taking over management until the inventory that was there was sort of moved, like sold out, like not ordering anything in that's not Penguin, and kind of like letting the rest of the stuff sell out. Which is interesting because now Penguin would be a temporary distributor on the West Coast for like all of the major books, and like, cool, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. So that'll be an interesting switch. Baker and Taylor's been a name for quite a while. Another name, Macmillan. So now we're talking Macmillan. The CEO, John Sargent, penned an open letter to libraries upset about the ebook policy change, and I know that that's been a discussion recently. He said specifically, I realize the lack of availability in the first 8 weeks will frustrate some ebook patrons, and that will make your jobs more difficult. Your patrons would be happy if they could get any book they wanted instantly and seamlessly, but that would severely be debilitating for authors, publishers, and retailers. We are trying to find a middle ground. We are not trying to hurt libraries. We are trying to balance the needs of the system in a new and complex world. It is a complex question.
It is, and I'll post the full text of the letter after the episode ends, and you can check out all of it. But it's, I mean, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, maybe Dahlia will have something to add whenever we get her on the screen. But yeah, it is complicated, and I don't know if the people who are getting the books from the library are going to then, if they can't get a hold of them, go out and buy them. I don't know if that's going to happen. I have a feeling that they'll just go to other books that they can get.
Yeah, I think it'll be very case by case. It depends very much on if that's their favorite author and it's their next book in a series or something, then yeah, maybe they'll go buy it. But if it's something they're trying out for the first time, then no. Yeah, I mean, as an author, I definitely want more people to be buying the books, because then maybe I can buy groceries. But I, as a reader who is completely broke, I totally understand. I want as much legally free content as I can get, because otherwise I miss out on a lot of content. And I don't know. It's a tough question. I get them wanting to subsidize their costs better. They're not denying the ebooks to the library entirely. I just think the entire system is broken and we need to find some better solution, because band-aids like this are only going to work for so long.
Yeah, and he even admits in the letter that he may be completely wrong. So, I mean,
because that's all we can do at this point. Yeah.
Everyone's just guessing all the time in publishing.
Will this work? Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, I think that the whole industry is kind of still clinging very hard to the way things have always worked, and it's not going to work for much longer because the entire technology is changing everything, and until technology breaks entirely, we're going to have to deal with those changes.
Yeah. X10 said, I doubt patrons of the library go buy books if they can't get them at the library. And Kendra said, as a kid, if it wasn't at the library, I wouldn't be able to read it. I feel like Amazon is bullying publishers, so publishers are bullying libraries.
That's definitely a possible chain of events.
Yeah. And I know, like, I mean, I work at a library and I see it daily, and I feel like there are some patrons who will buy a book if it's not available. But they come to the library first. But most of them are just, their entire reading life is the library. You know, they don't have the money to spend on books. So
yeah, like I know readers like my dad, you know, he libraries because he's so voracious that it would just be cost prohibitive to buy all of them. But yeah, if he can't find something at the library and he wants to read it bad enough, he'll buy it. But there's definitely going to be a huge section of the library readership that can't make that decision.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that cheery note, we're going to bring on our special guest. So Dahlia Adler is an associate editor of Mathematics by Day, a blogger for Barnes & Noble Teens and LGBTQ Reads by Night, and an author of young adult and new adult books at every spare moment in between. Her novels include The Daylight Falls duology, Just Visiting, the Radley University trilogy, and the upcoming Cool for the Summer, which is, I think, coming out in 2021. Yes. Okay. She's the editor of the anthologies His Hideous Heart and That Way Madness Lies. So please welcome Dahlia to the show. Hello.
Hey.
I'm glad you could join us.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I just read like all the things that you do, and it's a lot. So your day job is in publishing, and you're a writer, and you're a book blogger, and you edit anthologies, and I feel like there are probably other things that
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I bet. How do those roles like intersect with each other and maybe even conflict with each other?
So, you know, on the one hand, it's really nice that I work in publishing by day, but that it's a different kind of publishing. So the work that I do as a math editor doesn't come home with me, which is a big deal. Because I think that if I had worked in trade publishing like I originally did, my first job was at Simon & Schuster. And then I moved out of New York City for a little while, and we all know what publishing is like outside of there. So by the time I came back, my resume was very academic. I don't think I would have been able to go on and also write books. So I appreciate that about it. But at the same time, it still has me working in contracts, working with authors, dealing with payments, like a lot of things that keep my brain sort of fresh on where it should be in terms of how publishing things work. So I like that about how my job intersects with everything else. One thing that's getting exhausting is I travel for that job and I travel as an author. And that, because now I have a toddler, especially, is like a little draining.
Absolutely.
Just figuring out the childcare for that has been a lot. The book blogging also has its pluses and minuses for sure. I love being able to promote books. I love being able to support books. I love getting books in advance. I love knowing what's coming up. I love meeting other authors that way. All that's been awesome. But I went through a big stretch in my career where I wasn't producing that much. And like initially I was, you know, with small press, and then I was kind of just doing short stories. And it took me some time to kind of, I'm in phase 2, my friend, the author Chase Verity referred to it as the Dollissance. Just my now
I
doing
love it.
anthologies with Flatiron and novels with Wednesday, and I'm like so excited about it. But it really does feel like a phase 2 in my career. But there was a while where it really grated on me. It's very hard to constantly talk about other people's books and have no one care about yours. That is very tough. And there's sometimes where you get so much joy out of talking about other people's books, it doesn't really matter. And sometimes where it just beats you down. And I think both intentionally and unintentionally, you kind of get used a lot as people see what you can do for them, but don't either tell themselves they don't have anything to give back to you or whatever. It's all a lie. You can always boost other people in one way or another, even if it's just like a retweet. But there was a lot of that, and that was a very hard thing for me to handle for a while. So there are times I was like not loving that I was a blogger and feeling like I was constantly just here for other people. So now I like how that part is balanced a little more, but the workload is intense. Yeah, I never really anticipated doing all of this at once, and we'll see how long I can.
Yeah. Besides the travel, do you ever find yourself just like overwhelmed by publishing? You're just like, I'm just gonna go be a barista or something.
I think every job can get overwhelming. Like, at least now I'm not dealing with a billion miserable customers every day. So there's ways in which I think being a barista would eventually beat me down too. So I think you kind of can get burned out at anything, no matter how much you love it. There's something about it that is just gonna destroy you. So, there's times it's better and there's times it's worse. Right now it's just busy. I happen to have 2 books due in December, so that's when I do my preview posts for Barnes & Noble, and LGBTQ Reads happens to be kind of booming right now, especially as you were talking about other sites kind of unfortunately discontinue or lessen their book coverage. It becomes more and more necessary to be there for authors who have so few places to choose from, because Bustle really was amazing, not just in how well they covered books, but that they covered a lot of mid-list titles. I know for Christina Areola, it was very important to cover books by women of color. They were filling a really, really great need in publishing and doing it with a really big audience. And it's going to be very, very hard to fill that gap. So whatever I can be there for, awesome. But there's also stuff I can't. And I hope somebody snaps her up immediately, but there just aren't that many spaces that even can, as you were saying. And that's a really tough thing about book blogging right now. So it also makes me feel like even if I want a break, now is just not the time till something else kind of gets on its feet, So very thankful for any donations that help me hire assistants, basically. I mean, thankfully I have a Patreon and people, donate to the coffee thing, and got some help. But I mean, you can get burnt out on anything, but I am definitely in a burnout stage right now.
Well, the link for the site is in the description, so if you want to check it out, go ahead and click on that. And then one final question on that front is, because I want to know personally, how do you find the time for all of it?
I don't know, man. I definitely do some work during other work. Nobody from my office is watching this, right? Hopefully not. So there's that. There's, just the way my brain works for certain things makes some things go much faster than they otherwise would. So, for example, I used to have a very good memory for birthdays. Now my memory for birthdays is terrible, but my memory for pub dates is excellent. So if I'm doing even this tremendously huge post on books and my, memory for books in general, just the basic details, any smaller details, my mind is a sieve. But, so to do a post of 10 books about this, at least to come up with titles, which is all I do for some posts in LGBTQ Reads, doesn't take me very long, because my brain really stores that, which is part of it. I mean, I think you can't understate that some people's brains are just kind of suited in a way that makes a certain job a little easier. And And then
Yeah,
otherwise,
I
having a
couldn't do that.
smartphone is great. Like WordPress app and Wix app and Twitter and just whatever I can do on my phone. I commute an hour and a half each way every day. Not every day, sorry, 3 days a week now. It was 4 until very recently. So whatever I can do on my commute, I do. Um, and then I just have to like really guard my Sundays for writing stuff or dealing with like anthology contracts or whatever. Trying to do a little of that at nights too. Thankfully, my in-laws are wonderful babysitters for Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. And that's another thing, just like partnership. I know it gets annoying to hear, but if you have a partner, having a good partner is kind of
Hmm.
really key in having the time to do things. And that's it. Work fast, work everywhere, and sleep very little.
Hmm. Unfortunately, Jasper is not a very good work partner.
That is
So
not helpful. Jasper,
No.
come
he
on.
doesn't even do dishes. Like,
Oh my God, come
yeah.
on. Yeah, I just like, it's funny because people are like, oh, how do you balance work and keeping a house? I'm like, I don't clean. I don't clean anything. And I take no time with my, like, there are things you have to give up for other things. So
Hmm.
I don't act like, and it's not giving up. These are things that are not in my nature to care that much about. I don't ever do my hair. I don't ever go to the gym. I don't shower that much. I don't clean my house. I like okay, I'm a little gross. So being a little gross kind of enables me to be somebody who has a little more time for these things. So when people think about what time is in the day, they're often factoring things into what they have to do that I don't care about. So, I just like I can't I don't have the luxury of caring what I look like anymore. I'm over it. I just can't do it. I put on lip gloss for this. You're welcome.
Fair, more than fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, ever since I got my robotic vacuum, I'm just in love with it. Like I turn it on and I go sit on the couch. My parents bought it for me. So I was just super lucky.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, one day I'm just going to pull the trigger and do it. But like, while I shop a lot and I recognize that things add up to that dollar amount, I have a very hard time pulling the trigger on
Yeah.
big dollar amounts
Mhm.
for anything.
No,
Me
fair.
too.
Yeah.
So
That's
going
all.
back to LGBTQ reads, it's
Yes.
been a while since the actual inception of the site, and I remember
Which
back
is pretty
when
wild.
I know, right? Like I was thinking about it, I'm like, wow, no, that's been a while.
It's coming up on 4 years.
I know. So talk about a little what inspired you to start it, because back then there were a few more options than there are now as far as, book blogs and publications that really cover, but what inspired you to start the site and take
So
on
there
that task?
definitely were. For me, the big inspirations at the time, what's now YA Pride was gay YA, and they were still pretty active. So it wasn't born so much from feeling a need for YA, even though that's the thing I focus on the most because I know it the best. That was the year that my first queer new adult novel came out. And I was also reading a lot of it. And I was like, I really want to talk about these kinds of books and romance novels. And at the same time, I think that's when middle grade kind of just started doing more than maybe one a year.
Yeah.
So I was looking at books on both sides of YA and being like, well, who's kind of taking care of these? There were a lot more. Even romance sites have really gone away since then. But at the time, there were a lot of romance sites and nothing else. And I was like, well, I want to focus on other areas under the queer umbrella. And I want to focus on younger than what gay YA is doing and older than what gay YA is doing. And that was the big impetus. Then a bunch of places either went on hiatus, went away, whatever. And I was already doing a lot of blogging about queer YA for Barnes & Noble because I do the preview posts every year, twice a year, talking about what's coming up in the next 6 months. And then that really kept me in the know for pretty much everything that was going on in queer YA. So I feel bad that sort of dominated the coverage of LGBTQ reads when it was intended specifically not to be like YA centric, but I work so much in the area of queer YA. But I also do in queer middle grade now. I do those preview posts for Barnes & Noble Kids now that there are more than 4, I think is what I need to have as like the minimum in order to be able to do a post for the site.
Mhm.
And now that there's more than 4 every 6 months, I now do that for them for middle grade too.
Which is amazing just
And
that there is that many. I'm
it's
so happy.
amazing. 2020 is going to be like banner year for queer
Wow,
middle grade. I think it's going to total, we're looking at like 15 right now,
fantastic.
which like shatters previous years. So that's really
Mhm.
cool. And then there have risen more like specialized sites in Queerlit that are amazing, like the Arrow Ace database by
Mhm.
Claudia Arsenio. 1,000% butchering that name. I'm so sorry. But if you go to at Arrow Ace DB, it's the most incredible thing. She's the author of a bunch of Ace books and Arrow books,
Mhm.
Baker Thief and City of Strife, and made this amazing database. And then there are some trans book sites, and there's the Lesbian Review. Um, and yeah, so there's some amazing resources, but still kind of nobody's doing all encompassing queer lit,
Mhm.
and literary fiction and historical fiction and specifically sci-fi fantasy. Well, you know what? Sci-fi fantasy actually also has a few sites. I don't know what's still working, what's not. So I don't want to give shout
Mhm.
outs because those seem to keep popping up, disappearing, popping up, disappearing. Um, but I still haven't found another site that really does the same kinds of thing, and especially for adult fiction. So I really try to stay on top of it, but it is hard.
It is hard.
Um, Michelle Hart, who works for O Magazine, is kind of amazing at it. And I just look at whatever like books she's posting about, and I'm like, okay, I got to make sure. And then I'll like scour and find information about it and figure out if it's
Mhm.
queer, or because she'll also cover if it just has a queer author, which
Mhm.
is great. But it's, for LGBTQ reads, I
Mhm.
stick to things that have queer main characters. So they require a little research, but yeah, there's still not really sites doing the same kind of thing. So it really inspires me to keep working on the stuff that it's really difficult to find elsewhere. Um,
Well, good.
and
In that vein,
that's actually everything now.
how can
So
we best support you in doing that? So authors and other members of the community, like what are the best ways besides straight up donation that we can support your efforts to
just
be amazing?
sharing the posts is amazing. Clicking on I just started having advertising, so clicking on the
Mhm.
ads. If you can get your publisher to do a giveaway through the site, that's cool. I did, Goodreads started charging for giveaways. I'm like, okay, so what if I did the same thing but for a lot less? I don't know. I haven't done any of that yet, but I'm just trying to think of
Yeah.
different ways to do it
Mhm.
that maybe publishers can kick in,
Mhm.
as opposed to authors having to do it. So I'm trying to
Yes.
give some more options in that regard, because I've had publishers want to place ads, and I was like, no, don't want to do that. Now I'm like, no, I got to make the site sustain itself somehow,
Mhm.
because it's really just a ton of work, and a lot of it is like publishers telling authors, oh, we're revealing your cover tomorrow. Like, if you want to find a place to reveal, and like for authors, they want to do a cover reveal. It's a big
Yeah.
deal. So it's a lot of like last minute work. So I just really, anything people can share, retweeting posts or reblogging posts would be huge. And if you are at a traditional publisher, get them to use the site,
Mhm.
financially in some way would be great. And then yes, obviously Patreon donations, all that's great, but really just engaging with it is a lot. Because
Absolutely.
stats matter as you're making advertising prices
Mhm.
and things like that. So, and then also like the whole point is for it to be a site people know about, for it to be a widespread resource. It's on a lot of like library sites. I want librarians to know about it and use it as a resource. I want schools. I want kids who don't have another way to find this stuff out. Like, I just want people to know about it. So anything you can do to spread the word is honestly awesome.
All right. Will do.
Beth said, what a great project. Also, Beth is asking if anyone else names their robotic vacuum.
If I had one, I probably would.
I definitely would.
All right, so you kind of talked about this a little bit, but your Twitter bio includes the phrase wrecking ball. Thanks to your reputation providing great book recommendations. I know I've sought you out before when I needed specific requests. Yeah. But so my question, you talked a little bit about this before, but maybe if there's something else, how how do you always know the perfect book to recommend?
So I feel like people just don't always look at the right angle when they're recommending books. Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, you want a book, I will tell you one I love, because it's not about what book you as the recommender love. If you know what else they love, you can pick up certain things. Like sometimes there's a trend of what people really love is found family, but they don't know how to phrase that. So when you hear other books that people like, sometimes you can pick up the elements that they're really loving about it. So when I do this Patreon, for example, the $25 tier is I have a discussion with you every month to help pick out the perfect queer book for you. And as people get, more accustomed to chatting with me about finding their books, I think I figure out in what excites them, what they're really looking for. I mean, and sometimes it's pretty basic. They just want, a sexual rep, and they don't care where they're finding it. Like, it's just like, but then you're like, no, there are ace books. You can be more specific. And then they're like, well, I guess I would love it in space. And I'm like, Tarish, they're the stars. Go, run. Like, that exists, I promise. So it exists in more than one, but so it's really, after a while, you learn what people are into and what aspects of books they're into, and that's what you really appeal to, or what authors they like in general. I have like groups where I think, like, if you like Corey Ann Haydu, you're gonna like Katie Cotugno, and you're gonna like Rachel Allen, and you're like, and I, it's sort of a chain. But yeah, it depends on the person, but usually you can figure out things about a person, what they're looking for in a book, or at least I feel like I can. So I don't know if that's so helpful, but
No, I
situation
can.
specific.
When I was working bookseller, that was the same thing. Like, people are like, oh, what do you recommend? Well, what are you looking for? What was the last thing that you really loved that you got pulled through? Like, I would always start the conversation there. And
that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
I might have to walk with you guys a little because my phone is dying.
Oh no.
We'll try not to try not to get motion sick.
Here are my bookshelves.
They're gorgeous bookshelves. I saw the picture you posted. I know, right? Like, I saw the picture she posted back on Twitter a while back, and I was like, oh, those shelves. Immediate self-envy.
My house is a mess.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Go into a charger.
We'll just distract people with other questions. So you and I actually were both in this situation a while back where we had to query agents as previously published authors. But for you specifically, like, you are friendly with a lot of agents from your work in various arenas. Can you tell us a little bit about how that experience was for you, and like any advice you have for people who might be in the same situation?
All right, give me 1 second.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm very dark, but
that's not too bad.
Nope, we can still see you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's super uncomfortable and feels really weird when you're friends with people. I remember when I used to query, and I was like kind of just becoming friends with agents to the point where I was like struggling really hard with, do I say Dear Ms. or Dear Jen or whatever? Mm-hmm. So this time around, that's gone. I'm like, how strange would it be to say Dear Ms.? But you don't want to let anybody down, and you don't want to make anybody feel bad. And it's funny because they're feeling the same thing with you. Like, they're going to reject you if they don't like your book. But this time around happened to be a very successful querying trip.
Yeah.
So I had different agents, and that was weird and uncomfortable and kind of terrible. But God, I don't even know good ways to talk about handling it. I mean, you have to be professional, and you have to remember that they're professionals too, and they're used to this. And I didn't really want an agent that I was good friends with, because you kind of have to be able to, I say get mad as shorthand, but like, if you have things you need to get done, if you are upset about something, like, you have to be able to deal with those feelings, and you have to be able to talk about them. And it can't be somebody that you're afraid of, like,
hurting.
I don't think you be somebody you're afraid of hurting, because you should be afraid of hurting anybody. But like, you know what I mean? You don't want somebody that you can't talk to about what's really going on and what you're thinking, because communication with an agent is so, so important. And that's just a lousy spot to be in. And I really didn't want to be in that spot. So that part was tricky, but at the same time, I was like, I was really trying to avoid querying friends. And then I was like, you know what? There are just not that many amazing agents in the business anymore. And I kind of felt like I had no choice. So I think you really have to consider all the things that are going to be best for your career in terms
Mhm.
of who are you comfortable having the difficult conversations with, but also really believe in and also really trust,
Mhm.
who isn't going to be take advantage of you and be lazy because they feel like, okay, but she's Dahlia, like it's fine, she'll understand if I'm whatever, because I
Mhm.
won't understand. I'm a hard ass, I actually really won't. um, so there's all those sorts of things to take into account. um, and one big thing when you're going in querying mid-career entirely, it's like some weird glare off my glasses, is it's not weird. Like I
No.
know I keep saying this, but like there's nothing, you're not a failure. It's not strange. Everybody pretty much has done it. I know almost
Mhm.
nobody who's still on their first agent. This year in particular has been a real mid-career
Yeah.
querying year, for
Yeah, I
various
can't think of
reasons.
anybody either that is on their
Yeah.
first.
The person I used to think of as like that person isn't even anymore. So
Yeah. No,
yeah, it's just normal, and it's not a failure on the part of an agent necessarily, and it's not, I mean, I
Mhm.
think if you're bleeding clients as an agent, then that's something that you really have to think about.
Yeah.
But that's, considerably rarer, and a lot of times it's just what clients want change. And I
Mhm.
think also one thing that's happened lately is just the YA market really confuses people right now,
Mhm.
and a lot of agents don't really want you to focus on it, and a lot of authors are trying to figure out how to diversify, but then agents have to also cover everything you want to do, and that's a really big thing. Talk
Mhm.
to agents about, like, I knew I wanted to do adult, so there's some agents I didn't bother querying because like their agencies don't do it.
Mhm.
um, but talk to them about your options for if you want to do something that isn't their usual. Some of them want to learn, some of them have another agent at the agency who can do it, and you have to
Mhm.
decide how you feel about that. And their reactions will tell you a lot about how they're going to handle that situation. But I think that's why it's gotten kind of complicated for a lot of people, is that there's more of a feeling of needing to be able to diversify now than there's ever been
Mhm.
for YA authors. And you got to find the agents who can roll with that. And I think some agents are learning that they have to roll with that a little more than they initially wanted to also.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's a complicated time, and you just have to remember that everybody does it. And especially when you're querying friends, it's just going to be painful and awkward, and it's going to suck. And then you're going to sign with somebody, and by a week later, it's not going to suck anymore. Like,
Everything will
the
be
agents
normal.
you rejected will move on, and you will move on, and the agents who rejected you won't feel like, whatever. Everything gets better, I promise. It's just really bad while you're in it for
Yeah.
everybody. I mean, just this week I'm like counseling 2 friends through it, 3 friends
Mm.
through it. Yeah. Everybody, all been published before.
Mhm.
And everyone's like, this feels so bad, or I feel like I failed, or I don't know how to choose this person who's a friend. I'm like, pros and cons, the basics. And I said to somebody, it sounds like your problem here is only like the pro for this agent is that they're your friend, and the pro for the other agent is everything else. So,
Like, this isn't a
you know,
decision.
yeah, it gets complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of people in that boat, and it's really worth remembering there's a lot of people in that boat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which
Um,
I hope is helpful to people. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, that's basically what
yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
You've been assembling and editing some like interesting anthologies lately. You have two that I can think of.
Yes,
Um, so
that's
can
it.
you talk a little bit about the process? Like, how do you choose the authors to contribute, and how are the anthologies sold? That kind of thing.
Sure. So His Hideous Heart was sort of an interesting assembly of authors because that half happened on Twitter. I had posed the question to Twitter, if you had to, like, if you could pair an author to retell any story, what would it be? And this teacher named Jacqueline said I would do um, an Edgar Allan Poe anthology with, and she named some authors, and I was like, I would love that with, and I named 2 authors, and I happened to have tagged them, and they replied, I would do that, I would do that. And then some other great authors were like, I would be into that, I'd be into that. So I jumped off Twitter. And then I went to the rest of my like favorite horror and thriller and dark fantasy, etc. authors. And that's how, and then I knew I wanted to do like a poem in the middle. So, I mean, for poetry. Amanda Lovelace was kind of the obvious like place to go. So I was very lucky she turned out to be a Poe fan. And that is how His Hideous Heart came about. So once I had the authors on board, I actually didn't have an agent. So I had to query agents first. Well, no, sorry. First, I had to put together a proposal. And you can find that proposal pretty much in full on my blog, which is dailydahlia.wordpress.com. That has a post called So You Want to Edit an Anthology. And I got asked to share my proposal so often that I finally just posted it there. And when I say almost in full, all it's lacking is like all the author bios, but it has mine even, so you can see an example. And that was put together with the help of some friends who've done anthologies before. So Sandra Mitchell, who did All Out, and Jess Spotswood, who did Tyranny of Petticoats and Radical Elements and Toil and Trouble, and Marika Nykamp, who did Unbroken, all kind of like sent me proposals or contributor agreements, whatever. And that's how I put that together. And Catherine Locke, who did It's a Whole Spiel, also helped talk me through some stuff, which was really, really helpful. So I put together proposals. I queried agents. I ended up with Victoria Marini, and we agreed to do just the anthologies together, or anthology. It was singular at that point. And then Sarah Barley at Flatiron thankfully loved it. And that's how that signed on. And then I was talking to her and I was like, I really love working with you. I really want to keep doing this again. And she was into that too. I was like, I have an idea for another one. And I listed all these authors. So that was a little bit of a different process because I was choosing the authors from the beginning. And then on the flip side, I also didn't have to write a proposal. Like once she heard the author, she was like, okay. And she'd already worked with me.
Done.
The concept was already laid out because it's going to be just like His Hideous Heart. So for how I chose the authors for Shakespeare, I wanted to do, there were a few things I took into account. So I wanted some authors who had done Shakespeare before. You know, I already saw how they reimagined Shakespeare and I loved it. So that's like Lily Anderson, for example, who did The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You. And then there were some authors who I really loved what they did with retelling in general. So like Ibi Zoboi, who did Pride, a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and that was a very cool version. But then also one thing that I really loved about how His Hideous Heart came out is that with zero instruction, everybody kind of did characters from the margins as main characters. And I really loved that because Poe really didn't do that. So instead of all these white men doing whatever, almost every protagonist was female in His Hideous Heart, except for one who was a Black boy. So everything got, you know, sort of new voice, new gaze, new angle. And I really want that for Shakespeare too. So I chose some of those authors by gazes I thought Shakespeare needed and perspectives I thought Shakespeare really needed. So, for example, there's a lot of cross-dressing stories in Shakespeare, but they're not trans stories. So I was like, well, let's get ourselves some trans and non-binary authors here. So Austin Chance, who, and that also whereas the retelling came in, Austin retold Peter Pan with Peter Darling. This will be his first YA, so that's exciting. And Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy also doing super queer, Anna Maria McLemore. So I knew I wanted super queer. And then some people I just love how they write kind of adventure or fairy tale-ness or, you know, I know we're very big Shakespeare fans is kind of how some of them came in. So like Patrice Caldwell, Samantha Mabry. Yeah, it was sort of a mix of different things. And some of those people have done short fiction really well before, and some of them I've never seen do short fiction, and it'll be cool. There was also some people I chose because I thought I knew I really wanted some of it to go dark, and I really wanted some people who were going to do really dark. So, you know, I had that faith in like Lindsay Smith and Kirsten White. I love Tochi Onyebuchi's fantasy, and I'm going to read his sci-fi, which I'm excited about. And there were just people I thought would do really cool jobs with what it is. So sorry, I can talk about this stuff forever, as you can see.
That is fine.
Yeah, it was a cool process of putting that together. And I really hope it won't be the last. I have kind of floated more ideas, but I have option clauses in each of these anthology contracts. So I just have to like wait and then like take my turn. So when this next one is in, I can discuss another, but I can't talk to anybody else about any anthologies right now. And I have so many ideas I want to do. So that kind of kills me, but publishing.
Yeah.
Right? Hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot.
What do you think the key is for a great anthology? Like theme or participants or?
All of it. I really
All
think
of it?
all of it has to come together. I think theme can be a little less important than what people are going to bring to the table, but I think theme is what brings people to the collection in the first place, unless they really, really know your authors already. I mean, there's some anthologies where the lineup is so good that, like, I don't care what the theme is. It might
Yeah.
be cute, but like, oh, okay, you have, insert 5 names here I'm obsessed with. I'm down. Um, but but I think the best anthologies are where all that stuff really comes together, because when you choose authors who are really well suited to the theme, which is what I think and hope I did with His Hideous Heart and That Way Madness Lies, I think that makes for the best collections. And I mean, that's what I think. I hope.
Yeah.
But you know what? Who knows? Because like 3 Sides of a Heart, for example, I can't. That's edited by Natalie Parker, and that's
Oh my God,
all
yeah.
love
Yep.
triangles and whatever.
Mhm.
And Lamar Giles, who's in His Hideous Heart, because he's a phenomenal thriller author, is like not somebody that I would have ever thought to pull in for something like that. And then I will never stop thinking about his story in that anthology. I think it's fantastic. The way that he's spun on that love triangle aspect is brilliant. Go read it. I will not spoil a thing here, but you know what? What do I know? Because it's, an author that I clearly love and respect and would pull into an anthology because I did, but that's not the premise I would have thought to put him on. And then he ended up doing a brilliant job with it. So what do I know?
Yeah. You know a lot, clearly, but nobody knows everything.
He has got to be one of YA's best short fiction authors. I mean, if he ever does his own short story book, I am there. His anthology contributions are unreal. As long as I'm just randomly talking about it. Is it really an interview with me if I don't try to sell you like 20 books in the process?
No, it's not. I would be very disappointed.
Yeah. God, I'm a mess. Sorry.
All of your favorite authors need to put you on some sort of like royalty.
I do check acknowledgements all the time.
Give Dahlia commission.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do for me is name a character after me. So thankfully, a few people have done that, which I greatly appreciate.
Fantastic.
Zoraida Cordova just said that there's a character in her next Wayward Witch who's like this very minor character, but she's named Dahlia, spelled the Spanish way without an H. And I'm like, okay, just so everybody knows, she's the hero of the book now.
I am claiming her. She is mine, and she is me, and you will love
she
her.
Is mine. Well, Anna Marie McLemore did the same thing, Spanish spelled Dahlia, in Wild Beauty, and she's the best book character of all time. So, I mean, I have no bias or anything, but I'm just saying she totally is.
Of course.
Yeah. I'll take that as my commission. Just name your characters after me.
Okay, so we are both survivors of a small press quasi-collapse. It's technically still there, but there was a growing pains to the nth degree, I guess, sort of period.
Yeah.
So what do you think authors should keep in mind when signing with a small press, or like what are the warning signs to look out for if you
I guess like just don't do it is like a rude answer.
Well, because there are some who make it.
I was really pro them once upon a time, as long as you were going in with your eyes open about the fact that like your advance is going to be much lower and things are just going to be a little messier, and you're not going to be in a lot of bookstores if you're in any, and you're not going to be in a lot of libraries if you're in any. I mean, baseline, even if you're with a good small press, you just kind of have to know that. If like that's going to crush you and crush your spirit, don't do it. You aren't going to get another chance with that book. It's not, I mean, almost never. I mean, Juliet Takes a Breath is like the first book I've seen kind of get yanked into the big pub world. I'm sure it's happened to some others, but like that's the only one coming to mind for me. I mean, it's really, if it's going to crush you not to see your book all over the place and not to be treated like authors at bigger publishers, just like don't do it, shelve it, find another day. I don't know. So that's baseline. Go in with your eyes open. But there's also indie publishers can collapse on a dime in a way that bigger publishers can't really. What happened with the small press that Erica and I are at is they just changed distributors, and that was the beginning of the end. Like that's what it was. I can't even tell you why necessarily, But everyone kind of went for the rights back after that, and I didn't. They actually still have my books, but for example,
Yep,
the
they
last
still
event
got
that I
mine.
went to before His Hideous Heart, the bookstore was like, they wouldn't send us any copies of your books, and like, I never heard from them about it. I never heard they were asked. I don't know why that is. That's, that can happen to you anywhere. It's more likely going to happen to you at a smaller publisher. So I just like signed copies of an anthology I was in instead. And that kind of stuff gets tough, and that kind of stuff gets grating. There's nothing I can tell you is a definite good sign, because even the ones that have good signs can just turn into something else one day. So the most important thing, and this is the most fatalistic thing I can say, but is you got to know the exit options immediately. So I do recommend having somebody look at your contract. Can be a lawyer, can just be somebody with publishing contract expertise, can be an agent, of course. At the very, very least, just have like an author friend with some knowledge, something. But understand the exit terms, what it would take to get your rights back. If you're going to owe money to get your rights back, if I tried to buy my books back now, and get the rights back, I think I would have to like buy out the stock, or would all be
Yeah,
pulped or something. They
yeah, I
won't
think
keep them in
that,
circulation. Like, those details are really
yeah.
messy, messier than messier than you can dream up on your own. So you really, really have to understand what it means to leave, what it means about if you're giving up that book forever if you leave, and what it means if you're giving up that book forever if you go with them and they just suck. So it's really tough. I don't even want to make recommendations of them, because if you look at this in 5 months and the books that I love, the places that I think are doing a good job made one change, had one, like a single personnel change can be everything.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's really tricky. If I was going to say good things about one right now, it would be Interlude, which is a queer press I do a lot of work with for LGBTQ reads. And I, love doing publicity with them, and I've seen them at conferences, which is, oh yeah, okay, let's talk about positives. So there's an example of a positive. They've had booths at conferences, and they've had authors at conferences, and they, at least publicity wise, seem to support their authors. They reach out to me for cover reveals or for excerpt reveals, and the authors are certainly free to do things with me. I can see they do actual events, so because they do Julian Winters, they do CB Lee. So they're really doing some great stuff. And that's, those are kinds of things I would look to. But, anything, if you're wondering if bookstore presence matters to you, go see what indie publishers have books on bookshelves. Some of the smaller publishers have really big distributors. So like Page Street and I think Entangled also is distributed by Macmillan, right?
Macmillan. Yep.
So like if your distributor is Macmillan, that's a really good thing. If and then there's so many factors. There's contracts and how many people are working on your book. And if you can find out about how the people working on your book get paid, honestly, like, I know that sounds ick, but that tells you a lot about the likely longevity of them staying there, which is not a small thing.
No.
So yeah, you got to figure out the things that are most important to you, and then see how the publisher you're interested in does with that. But you always have to look at the contracts, no matter what. Like, I don't care if bookstore presence is important to you and they have a good distributor. Look at the contract. That matters. Like, I was just hearing today about somebody who got, a very small advance for her book, and that's fine, but apparently there were no royalties in her contract. So when her book actually blew up, that didn't do anything for her. That's horrible. A royalty-free contract is not acceptable.
No,
So,
not unless it's a work for hire, and even then it's kind of
work
like
for hire, different situation.
but
yeah, no, that was a very sad and terrible thing to hear about. So
sucks.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, my 2 books are still with that first press, and the rest of that series will never see the light of day. And I've actually gotten 2 questions in the past week about when the 3rd book is coming out, and I'm like,
I'm sorry. I know I have the first 2.
never. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. It's
Yeah.
written. It's sitting in my computer right now. I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but it's,
I know.
yeah.
I also
I'm
have
stuck.
the book I thought was going to be. I still have technically one book on an open contract there, but I mean, it's
No,
expired now. They
I
don't get it
closed out my
anymore.
contract.
But
I didn't pull rights for the first 2, but I closed out the contract.
Yeah. So it's Yeah, it's hard. I have that whole book on my hard drive and I love it. It's like, it was the very first book of my heart. And I'm like,
Mhm.
will it ever see the light of day now? Maybe someday I'll like
Yeah.
self-publish it. I don't really know what else to do with it, but
Yeah, I think if anything, that's pretty much my only option with that, because it's the third of a series that was with a small press and didn't do anything. So like, what are my other options? Nothing. That is my only choice. So
But
yeah.
I mean, I will say, I do still get royalties from behind the scenes, under the lights, and just visiting. So in that way, first of all, thank you everybody who's still buying those books 5 years later, 6 years later in the case of behind the scenes. Or I guess next year will be 6 years. God, I'm bad at math. Don't tell my job. But I'm very
because
grateful for that.
our
And
books came out the same year, right? Yeah, so that would
2014.
have, yeah, so
Yeah.
6, yeah. Oh my God, next year is 6 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's wild.
That is how long I've known you then.
Yeah. I probably since before our books came out, no?
Yeah, 2013 with all the pub, all the lead ups and stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Scary to think
Aw.
about.
Yeah.
No, I
So-
still remember the day you added me to the Not a Catfish list. It was very exciting.
That's my favorite thing in the world. But I would have had I had much better things to say about it. I mean, we signed at BEA. We were in bookstores and in libraries, and still you can occasionally find in libraries. But
Occasionally.
yeah, you have to go in with like 3 eyes wide open.
Yeah, and
basically.
expect collapse at any moment.
Yeah, and be prepared and know your path if there's collapse at any moment. And a book that you cannot bear to have collapse is maybe not the best. I don't know. I hate sounding like terribly fatalistic, because I don't, like, for all this, I don't have regrets that I did it. Like, what would my career have, like, I've had a career for the past 5 years, and I wouldn't have without that. Like, because my career for like 2 or 3 years was self-pub and short stories. Who would have bought my self-pub books if they didn't know me from other books? Who would have brought me into anthologies if they didn't know me from other books? And then would I have gotten to edit my own anthology in 2019? I don't know. Would I have sold a novel like again and again and again? So, there's so much I learned from publishing, period, that has factored into what, my career as it is now, which hopefully I won't have any reason to regret in the same way. Now all big publishers, that's all nice and everything. So it's hard to be like fully down on the experience. It's just, there's so many things you can't even imagine to be prepared for. And that I think is the really hard part that I just want people to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was with a very small press that collapsed, and like it was messier. It was like the owner sold the company to a person that didn't exist. Like, it was a stock photo.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was great.
I can't remember the name of yours, but I think I was just talking to somebody else who was at it.
Entranced.
Yes. I have a coworker who was also published with Entranced, also 2014. And she mentioned it, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't thought of them in years, but I never knew what happened to them.
It was just like a romance novelette, so like it didn't bother me that much, but some people had like series with them and stuff, so.
It's really rough. Yeah.
Well, Ebony said, this is good stuff. Learning so much.
Stuff. I'm sorry, it's depressing
It's
stuff.
good to learn, though.
Yeah, that's how I feel about everything. Like,
I remember an early, it was in one of my first events, like on my first official post-pub, like month of publication event. I ended up at the bar with some authors, and like they're going on about all of this stuff, and they're just like, "Oh no, we're ruining her new author glow." And I was like, "No, tell me all of the things I need to know what to look out for."
Are like a force to be reckoned with.
Fantastic. I love it.
Rant.
But I mean, seriously, they were just going on about all of this gossip at the time, back in 2014. And I was just like, no, seriously, tell me all of the things. Right. Like, give me all of the details. I need to know what to watch out for. Exactly.
I come from a family of educators. It's what we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really important to know what you're getting into, and, look positive and all of that, but don't back yourself into a corner accidentally with optimism. Which I think I have done at least once in my life. So, it happens.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. All right. We have one more question for you before we're going to let you go. I prepared you for this one, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. What is, and I ask this of every guest, by the way, what is the most important book you've ever read for whatever reason?
There's no way in hell I'm narrowing it down to one.
This is
But I
Dahlia.
think, okay, so I did think about it. I am going to go with Sloppy Firsts by Megan McCafferty, because I think that was the first voice I ever read that sounded like me, that sounded kind of like the inside of my head, that felt like a character like me. And I, you know, I grew up how I grew up. So I mean, that character is not modern Orthodox Jewish, but that's how I grew up. So already I'm not seeing myself in any books. Like, that's just not a thing you expect to see your teen years. That's not, or ever. So I didn't realize there was a way I could see myself in books without seeing that part. But I guess also I was like 25 when I read it. So, I'm no longer going to like yeshiva, like I'm having, more normal life like everybody else. But I was like, oh, there is a place for characters who sound like me. So maybe there's a place for characters who just are like me. Maybe the way I write has a place, because I grew up on like Sweet Valley High and Babysitter's Club, and they had such like, they weren't like me at all. They didn't sound like me. They didn't feel like me. They didn't make choice. When I say like me, I mean like make choices like me, or have neuroses like me, or make mistakes and have flaws in the same kind of way that I did. Not like, Elizabeth, why are you getting into the trunk of that car? But I mean, just like the basic stupid human things, and that character just felt so real and like a person. And I think it convinced me that the characters that I write that kind of had me in them and sounded like me and whatever were viable for publication in a way. I don't know if it's related to it being why I kind of, when I read that is also the same phase of life in which I finally started querying and was like, I'm going to start sharing my work now and trying to get published and not be terrified of people reading it. I've never actually like made that connection, if there really is a connection there. But I like to think maybe I feel like it did a lot for me in terms of feeling like I was a viable character.
Nice.
So
That's
that
definitely
part
an
was cool.
important
It would
book.
take a very long time till I read a story with an actual modern Orthodox Jewish teen. So thank you, Suri Rosen, for playing with matches. But yeah, I'm going to go with that.
You like how she still managed to throw in a second book?
Yeah. Good job.
And I didn't even say my other thought, which was Cracked Up to Be by Courtney Summers, or my favorite book as a kid, which was A True Girls in Brooklyn by Betty Smith, or Outrun the Moon by Stacey Lee, which like
yeah, you didn't mention those at all
to give me the vibe of my love for True Girls in Brooklyn. Do you see how controlled I was?
We do now, yeah.
All right. Well, Dahlia, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're gonna
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna let you sign off and finish a couple things up. And you can find information about Dahlia in the description now, and also later. So yeah. All right. Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Ooh, I cut her off right before she was saying something.
It was just bye. I think we're okay.
Okay. She was probably like telling us to read another book.
That would make sense.
All right. So Dahlia, I know you're still listening. If you you can close the window if you want, or you can just keep listening to us and we'll talk to you at the end, whatever you want to do. All right. That was great. Wasn't it good?
Yeah, absolutely. She's always a delight to talk to. So
yeah,
it's great when I get to speak to her actually in person, live, and not on Twitter.
yeah. Mainly on Twitter and a group.
Oh, she said she was going to say congrats on the new release. Oh, thank you, Dahlia. I'm excited about it. That cover is freaking gorgeous. I'm really, really happy with my publisher for that cover, because good Lord, did they listen to me on that one.
Okay.
I was stunned when I saw it for the first time. I was really, really happy.
All right, so it is time for Audiobook of the Week, which is a segment that I wanted to do because I love audiobooks and it's my show, so I get to do what I want.
Works for me.
So the audiobook for this week is Natalie Tan's Book of Luck and Fortune by Roselle Lim. The publisher says, quote, lush and visual, chock full of delicious recipes. Roselle Lim's magical debut novel is about food, heritage, and finding family in the most unexpected places. It's narrated by Catherine Ho, who is new to me, but she narrates a lot of books that are on my TBR list. So I look forward to listening to those because she was a delight to listen to. And if you're a fan of magic woven into every day, and also food descriptions that will literally make you drool on your own shirt, you should definitely check it out. I was so hungry listening to this book, and I'm sorry you're going to eat more when you're listening to this because,
Okay.
yeah. But in June, it was optioned for a TV show, so I hope that materializes soon, and because then I get to see the food too.
Clearly, all about the food.
Yeah.
Does anything what is this book actually about? Is there only food?
So it's about a girl who she moves back to the town she grew up in, the area she grew up in, the neighborhood, after her mother dies. And there was a restaurant that was owned by her grandmother, and she decides to like spruce it up and kind of help revitalize the neighborhood because it was a restaurant that brought a whole bunch of people into the neighborhood when she was younger, you know. So there's a lot of like magical realism, and she cooks these recipes, and it affects the people around her very much like Water for Chocolate.
Or gosh, what was that really corny movie with Sarah Michelle Gellar?
I don't know.
Oh my God, it was exactly that. She took over her mother's restaurant, and she couldn't cook to save her own life, but then all of a sudden there was this magic crab.
Oh no.
Magic crab. It was really cute, but oh my God, cheesy as all get out. But yeah. All of her emotions were fed into the food, and if you ate the food, you would be sad or happy or angry or whatever. And it was a very cutesy rom-com, but that's adorable. Sounds totally up my alley.
She's the main character. She's actually a cook, and she moved away to like pursue her career. But then she gets her grandmother's old recipe book, and these are the recipes that are like impacting people in different ways. And it's just beautiful and sad and happy at the same time, which is like everything. You know. And there is a romance. It's not a main plot point though, but there's a romance in it too. So all kinds of stuff. Yeah. All right. So it's time to discuss today's viewer poll. And so I'm just going to put up my Twitter poll on the screen right now. Oh, I got to take that off. 1 second. Okay. So I asked this, what do you most often prefer to listen to when you write? 33% people said music with lyrics. 29% people said instrumental music. 24% said silence, and 14% said ambient sounds / noise. What do you listen to when you write, Erica?
Depends on the day, but I was definitely in the ambient sound / noise. I do my best work coffee shops, in the office during break times when there's other people around, and so therefore procrastination is not a good thing because there's that like faint level of peer pressure. That's usually where I'm the most productive. If I'm home, then there's all of these nice books and like lots chairs to distract me and keep me from writing. I also grew up in musical theater and dance, so like music with lyrics is like something to sing to, and therefore distracts me from what I should actually be like typing into my computer.
I try not. Oh, Ebony said, Sarah, you're a total foodie. I am.
Yes.
If you go to my Instagram, you will know. Like, just go to my Instagram. I cook all the time. So like that, I was just like, oh yeah, I could make dumplings. Like dumplings are not a thing I've ever made in my life, but Anyway, I got distracted, of course. Okay, yeah. So I try not to depend on any one thing because I have, because of like some elements of my personality. I have a little bit of an obsessive personality. And so if I decide that I write when I listen to classical music or whatever, if I'm in a situation where I can't, then it would lead me to not being able to write unless like those conditions were perfect. So I try really hard to like switch it up and make sure I'm not like depending on any one thing. But I used to write when I had cable television, I would turn on, whatever channel Law and Order was just on 24/7. And I would turn that on, and then I would also turn music on because just like I couldn't focus on one thing.
Yeah, competing noise.
But then I also didn't hear like random noises in the street or whatever that would distract me. Bess. So Bess is one of the people that I actually write with. She said Sarah once had to do a write-in listening to Chap Hop for 3 hours. I don't even know what Chap Hop is, but Bess always plays music whenever we're together.
Yeah, it changes. There are definitely some days where even if I am out somewhere, I need to I'll put in music of some sort. Usually though, that's like, I love listening to Philip Glass's soundtrack for the Hours movie. That is a gorgeous, like 52 minutes of piano and violin and cello, and it's engaging enough to keep me alert, but not distracting. And there's other quietly classical music like that I will sometimes listen to. But then I also marathon Criminal Minds in the background. So
that's so funny because Ebony said I do my best writing watching but not watching reruns of Castle. We all watch law movies, law TV shows.
That would make sense though, because it's a story about a writer. So I get that one. No, Criminal Minds, I tend to, because I've seen it enough that I can ignore it. Or like other movies, big disaster movies, Day After Tomorrow, stuff like that, where it's like those ridiculous ones where you can watch for 5 minutes and not need to know what's going on. Like, I'll put that on sometimes in the background for that sort of conversation element, but definitely not silence. If it's too quiet, I tend to distract myself.
Yeah. Lately, I've been using Ambient Mixer a lot. If you Google Ambient Mixer, it's got all different kinds of sounds, and you can like adjust the elements in them too. But like the time when I really need it is if I'm out in public writing and someone near me is having like a really distracting conversation.
No, that's the time you grab your phone and start tweeting. Like the play-by-play.
Do that too. Yeah. Yeah. But I try to be as flexible as I can with my writing habits so that I don't get stuck in one rut.
Yeah, that's fair. Because if I get stuck in a rut, I burn out on that rut and then I can't write like that again for a while. So I feel you.
All right. So today's quote of the week is actually 2 different related quotes of the week. And the first one is Mark Twain, Classic, a book which people praise and don't read, which is just hilarious considering Mark Twain. He's classic now. And then the other one is a classic is a book that has never finished saying what it has to say. So I feel like these are kind of like conflicting, maybe not. I mean, people could not read them and they still can't be done saying what they need to say.
Or it could be saying that the book itself literally never got to the point.
I didn't read it that way, but that
was how I read it the first time. The first time I read it, that's how I read it, was the book never actually got to the point.
I interpret it as like people keep mining things from it, like people keep getting things out of it.
That can be true of a book that never actually got to the point.
Yeah.
Those two are not mutually exclusive, which might be what he's trying to say. So
perhaps.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. Like when I was looking for quotes, I found those 2 really close to each other, and I was like, "This is funny." It seems like they're arguing at each other, like over however long ago they both lived.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so we went a little long today, but that is not surprising because Erica and I, whenever we get together, we'll just talk forever until someone falls asleep. So,
pretty much.
No surprise there. But yeah, thank you so much, Erica, for joining me. If you want to find more information about Erica, there are links down below. And also go check out her newest novel, Pax Novus.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me. It was a blast anytime.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna take you off the screen while I do the final closing words, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. All right, thank you so much for everyone who tuned in, and everyone who's going to be watching the replay as well. If you enjoyed this show, don't forget to like and subscribe. So you don't miss another episode, and also tell your friends, because that is how people find out about shows like this. If you want to subscribe to receive email reminders the day of the show, and you can also sign up to receive a summary a couple days after the show as well, and that will include all the links. But the links will be added to the description later tonight. And then finally, thank you so much to the people who support me on Patreon. You're going to see their names in the outro, but if you're interested in supporting the show on Patreon, there's going to be a link in the description down below for that as well. And I've mentioned several times before, but I just want to make sure you'll go and check out my guests. The social media accounts and their websites are all in the description, as well as the PubTalk Live social media information. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.